Welcome in this super fast crash course introduction into HTML. If you find that things are going too fast, there's a link in the description to our full 1-hour video that goes through the same topics but at a slower pace and in way greater depth. If you're going to work with web development, I strongly suggest you install Visual Studio Code, as it will help you do things much easier and way faster. So HTML, hypertext markup language, is simple text documents written by humans and read by browsers. They're used to define the content, structure, and resources on a website, and it's one of the 3 languages that a browser understands: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It tells the browser what's on the page and where to find the other necessary files that make up the page. A page is made up of elements which have a start tag and an end tag with content in between. There are some tags that don't have any content, so they only have start tags, not any end tags. They're called singleton tags. In the start tags, you can insert attributes that are either specific for the element type, such as the image source or the hyperlink reference on a link, or a more generic attribute like the title attribute, which lets you hover over something on a website and then see a title attribute on it. The ID attribute is used to identify a unique element if we want to link to it or find it with JavaScript or select it in CSS. The style attribute allows you to write CSS directly inside an element, but you can also write CSS in a style element. But when you do that, you need to use selectors. If you have CSS files, you can attach them in the HTML head section with a link element using the hyperlink reference attribute to set the path and the rel attribute to define that it's a style sheet. There's a number of attributes that allow JavaScript to be triggered, such as onClick, onHover, onFocus, onSelect, and onKey. The script element will allow you to write JavaScript directly in your HTML code, and you can also use the script element to import a JS file with JavaScript in it instead. An HTML document consists of a doc type element and an HTML element, where the HTML element contains a head element and a body element. Generally, the head section is for invisible things like importing CSS, setting the character set, and the viewport, but it's also where you set the title of your page and the meta description that allows Google to say something about your page. The body section contains all the visible stuff, such as the text, the images, and videos, but the last thing in your body should be your JavaScript, no matter if you import it from other files or if you write it directly in the HTML document. Headers are called H1 to 7, and other text normally go into paragraphs. You can make underlined, italic, or bold text with the U, I, or B elements, but generally you'll want to use something like the EM or the strong elements instead. Tables primarily use the table element, where TR elements represent rows and TD elements represent cells inside rows. Remember to use the same number of cells in all rows. In forms, you can collect data and send it to a server. The method attribute decides if it's a GET or a POST request, and we generally use the POST request because the GET request puts the collected data into the URL. The action attributes decides the URL of the server to receive the data, and if you don't use the method or action attributes, the form creates a GET request and sends it to the same site that the form is on. There is a number of different input attributes, but you'll mostly use text, password, checkbox, and submit. You need to use the name attribute to tell the server which field was filled out, and it's generally a good idea to give an input the same ID and name. Submit inputs can be replaced by button elements if you need them to have content, but they still need to be of type submit. There's also radio buttons, which allow you to select between options on a screen. These are grouped together via the name attribute. And there's the drop-down menus, which lets you select an item in a drop-down list. The item you can select is an option element inside of a select element. And that's going to be all that you need in order to make some super ugly websites, because if you need them to be pretty, then you need to design them using CSS. There's a link for another video about that in the description below. Thank you for participating, and see you in the next video.